The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with delegates from every corner of the universe, beings from countless worlds, each with their own customs and ideas, gathered in this room to decide the fate of entire galaxies. The hum of quiet conversations echoed as representatives adjusted their seats, preparing for another long day of negotiations. But today, something was different. At the front of the hall stood Eleanor Harris, Earth's representative. Her position was an unexpected one. Earth had always been a quiet player in the galaxy, just a small, insignificant planet in the vastness of space. The Council had once looked at humanity as nothing more than a species too young to be taken seriously. Earth had no galactic influence, no mighty fleet to back its voice. But all that had changed, and today, Eleanor was about to show the galaxy just how much. With a calm expression, she adjusted the microphone on the podium, her fingers tapping lightly against it, signaling the start of the session. The quiet conversation stopped. All eyes turned toward her. The anticipation in the room was palpable. What news would she bring? What decisions would she propose for Earth? But no one was prepared for what came next. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, Eleanor began, her voice clear and steady. It is time for humanity to take its rightful place in the galaxy. And so, I have an important announcement to make. The tension in the room increased, and delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't unusual. Diplomats often made announcements, but the weight of this one felt different. They were all curious. What could this announcement possibly be? Eleanor took a moment to glance at the holographic images of the galaxy that surrounded the hall. The map was vast, stretching to the farthest reaches of known space. The Galactic Council controlled much of it, but there were always areas in flux, unstable, in conflict. Earth, until now, had been one of those quiet, peaceful places, just a dot on the map. Not anymore. She took a deep breath and spoke the words that would change the course of history. We, humanity, are entering the war. A stunned silence filled the room. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy, as if the entire galaxy had paused. Delegates exchanged shocked glances, some even looking to their neighbors for confirmation that they had heard correctly. Some laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. Earth, a warlike species. Ridiculous. But Eleanor did not waver. She stood tall, eyes sharp, scanning the room as though daring anyone to challenge her. Her words cut through the whispers like a blade. We are joining the war against the Galactic Empire. Humanity will not remain neutral any longer. The murmurs started at first, soft and uncertain. Then, slowly, they grew louder. The shockwaves spread through the room as the reality began to sink in. The peaceful, isolated humans, who had never shown any sign of being a threat, had just declared war against the greatest power in the galaxy. You cannot be serious. One of the delegates from the Zoreth Alliance shouted, standing up abruptly. Earth cannot possibly compete with the might of the Galactic Empire. You'll be crushed in an instant. Eleanor's gaze shifted to him, her expression unflinching. We are not afraid, she replied, her voice calm but resolute. We have fought before, and we will fight again. Our people are strong, and we stand united. You underestimate humanity if you believe we cannot stand against the Empire. The room erupted in chaos. Some delegates stood, shouting in disbelief. Others whispered in fear. Some were horrified by the implications of Earth's declaration. Others, more opportunistic, began to speculate about how they could benefit from this new alliance. But all of them were taken aback by the boldness of this decision. The Galactic Empire had long been the supreme power in the galaxy. They had crushed rebellions, overthrown governments, and maintained a stronghold on countless worlds. For a small, insignificant planet like Earth to challenge them was unthinkable. And yet, here they were. A new power had risen, and they were determined to fight. Why now? Asked another voice, this one from the Delian Federation, a powerful alliance of species. Why risk everything? What has changed on Earth? Eleanor paused for a moment, her fingers brushing against the edge of the podium. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she glanced toward the holographic map again, where the outline of Earth gleamed like a tiny but defiant beacon. "What has changed?" she repeated. "We have been watching. We have seen what the Empire does to worlds that resist them. We have seen countless innocents die, countless systems fall under their rule. And we can no longer stay silent. Humanity has lost too much, and now we are taking a stand. This galaxy belongs to all of us, not just the Empire." There was a moment of silence before another delegate spoke. This one, from the Varanthian Collective, a highly advanced race, leaned forward, her voice calm yet filled with curiosity. "Your fleet. You claim you have the strength to fight the Empire. Show us. What do you bring to this war, Earth?" Eleanor smiled faintly, and for the first time, she revealed a glimpse of what the galaxy had underestimated for so long. "We bring everything we have," she said, "and more. Earth has been preparing for this moment." The words lingered in the air like a challenge. Eleanor knew the Council had no idea what they were about to face. Earth's true strength was something they could never have predicted. The Council, still reeling from the shock of the announcement, was beginning to realize that humanity was no longer the weakling in the galaxy. Earth was a force to be reckoned with. As the Council debated among themselves, Eleanor Harris turned and walked away from the podium, her mission complete. The galaxy would never be the same again. The news of Earth's declaration echoed throughout the galaxy, and the reactions were as varied as the species that inhabited the stars. The once dismissed planet had now drawn the attention of every major power in the galaxy. Some laughed at the audacity of humanity, others trembled at the implications, and a few even began to consider the possibility that the humans might not be as powerless as they once appeared. In the heart of the Galactic Empire, deep within the Empire's command center, High Commander Zoran watched the live feed of Eleanor Harris' announcement with a mix of disbelief and anger. His scared face twisted in irritation as he slammed his fist down on the armrest of his chair. "This is absurd," he spat. "How could a primitive species like Earth think they can stand against us? They must be mad." The Imperial generals around him nodded in agreement. They were all well versed in the might of the Empire, its warships, its vast fleets, and its unrivaled power. No species had ever dared to oppose them, and lived to tell the tale. Humanity, with its small fleets and rudimentary technology, had no chance. But Commander Zoran couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. There was something about Earth's determination, the fire in Eleanor's eyes, that didn't sit right. He had dealt with countless rebels and insurgents in the past, but Earth was different. Something told him this was not a threat to ignore. "Prepare the fleet," he barked. "We will teach them a lesson they will never forget." Meanwhile, far from the Empire's control, other species began to take notice of Earth's boldness. In the neutral zone, the Valorians, a technologically advanced race with a keen sense of honor, watched the broadcast in silence. They were no strangers to war, and they understood the stakes better than most. "What do you think?" asked Talia, a respected member of the Valorian High Council. She stood in front of the holotable, her fingers tracing the faint outline of Earth on the projection. "Earth is not a small threat anymore," said Valak, the High Strategist. Their words were not mere boasting. "I sense something more. They've been preparing for this. We should reach out to them, offer our support." Talia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "If they can withstand the Empire, they might be able to tip the balance in the war. But it's a risky gamble. The Empire does not take kindly to those who defy them." But as the Valorians discussed the implications, another species took a different path. The Zoreth Alliance, known for their ruthless pragmatism, saw an opportunity to exploit Earth's declaration. Their representative, a calculating and cold individual named Zar, sent a covert transmission to Earth, offering their support under certain conditions. "We will provide you with weapons, technology, and reinforcements," Zar's message began. "In exchange, you must agree to a pact with the Zoreth Alliance. The Empire cannot be defeated by any one species alone. Together, we can ensure our victory, and perhaps even reshape the galaxy in our favor. The offer was tempting, but Eleanor knew better than to trust the Zoreth Alliance. They had their own agenda, and it was one that didn't align with Earth's values. She sent back a message, polite but firm, declining their offer. "Earth will stand alone," she responded. "We will fight our own battles, without the interference of others. The galaxy will see that humanity is not a species to be underestimated." Back in the Galactic Council chambers, the news was equally shocking. The representatives from dozens of star systems exchanged whispered conversations, some growing more worried by the moment. The once ignored Earth had just become the biggest threat to the status quo in the galaxy. "The Empire will crush them," one delegate murmured. "We cannot allow this to escalate," another replied. "If the humans gain a foothold, it could spark rebellions across the galaxy. We must contain them before they get too powerful." But even as the council debated, another voice stood out, a quiet one. The delegate from the Andromeda Union, an older being named Vrel, raised his hand. When the room quieted, he spoke softly but with conviction. "We must remember," Vrel said, his voice steady, "humanity has always been underestimated. Their strength lies not just in their numbers or technology, but in their resilience. We cannot dismiss them as easily as we think." His words fell on deaf ears for the moment, but Vrel knew better. He had witnessed firsthand the tenacity of humanity. He had seen them fight and survive against overwhelming odds. The decision to dismiss them was one that the Council might regret. Across the galaxy, Earth's bold move was sending ripples of uncertainty through every corner of space. Some saw it as a death wish for the humans. Others saw it as a challenge to be reckoned with. But no one could deny that humanity's entrance into the war was a game-changer. Back on Earth, preparations were underway. Eleanor had returned to her office after the announcement, her thoughts focused on what lay ahead. She stared at a map of the galaxy, contemplating the dangerous path her people had chosen. "They said we'd be crushed," she muttered, running her fingers over Earth's location on the map. "But we will show them that humanity doesn't fall easily." Behind her, her assistant entered the room, holding a data pad with new intelligence reports. Earth was already receiving reinforcements, alliances were forming, and the fleet was being strengthened. But there was one thing that still worried her: the unknown power of the Empire. They had faced countless threats, but the Empire was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. "We'll need to be ready," she said, turning to her assistant. "Every ship, every soldier. The Empire won't show mercy, and neither will we." As the galaxy held its breath, Earth's next move would set the stage for the most explosive conflict in galactic history. Would humanity be able to withstand the Empire's wrath, or would this be their final stand? The days following Earth's shocking declaration of war were filled with tension. The entire galaxy seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation to unfold. Across the neutral zones, along the borders of the Galactic Empire, and within the secretive corners of countless star systems, preparations were being made. War was coming, and everyone knew it. Back on Earth, the military was on high alert. The Odyssey, Earth's flagship warship, stood ready for deployment, its sleek design now fully operational, its weapons and shields tested in rigorous simulations. The fleet of smaller ships designed to support the Odyssey had also been completed. Earth's forces were small compared to the Empire's vast armada, but they had something else, something more potent than sheer numbers. "We're ready," General Jackson reported to Eleanor as she reviewed the status updates from Earth's command center. "The fleet is assembled. Our forces are unified. We've been working with the Valorians on some advanced tactics. We're ready for whatever the Empire throws at us." Eleanor's eyes locked onto the holographic map in front of her. The stars and planetary systems were laid out in an intricate pattern, with several key locations marked in red. These were the Empire's choke points, the systems that controlled vital trade routes, communication lines, and military strongholds. "We'll strike fast and hit hard," Eleanor said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "We're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every world under the Empire's control. We won't just defend. We'll disrupt their entire system." The Odyssey would lead the charge, using its advanced cloaking technology and energy weapons to disable enemy ships and strike at the heart of the Empire's power. Earth's fleet would focus on precision strikes, cutting through the Empire's supply lines, crippling their communications, and disabling their war machines. But Earth was not the only one preparing for the storm. The Galactic Empire had already started to mobilize its forces. Commander Zoran, still fuming from the shock of Earth's announcement, had ordered his fleet to move to the borders of Earth's solar system. He was determined to crush this rebellion before it had a chance to gain momentum. "Launch the fleet," Zoran commanded from his command center aboard the flagship Imperius, his eyes fixed on the holographic map of Earth's position. "Prepare to make an example of them." As the Empire's fleet assembled in orbit above Earth's sun, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The Imperius, an enormous warship with a menacing black hull, led the charge. Alongside it, hundreds of smaller vessels followed in perfect formation, each one equipped with the Empire's most devastating weapons. Zoran stood on the bridge of the Imperius, watching Earth grow closer on the viewscreen. He had faced countless enemies in his long career, but this was different. Earth was no longer just a small, insignificant world. It had become a symbol of defiance, a thorn in the side of the Empire. And the Empire was not about to let it flourish. "We'll show them the cost of defiance," Zoran muttered to himself. "They'll learn the hard way that no one challenges the Empire." Meanwhile, Earth's allies, though few in number, were making their own preparations. The Valorians, as expected, had sent reinforcements, joining Earth's fleet in a united front against the Empire. While the Valorians were known for their technological advancements, their contribution was more strategic than anything else. They provided Earth with crucial intelligence on the Empire's movements, as well as specialized equipment that would help in the upcoming battle. Other species, including those from the neutral zones, watched closely, unsure of whether to align themselves with Earth or stay neutral in a growing conflict. Some feared the consequences of anchoring the Empire, while others saw this as an opportunity to weaken the galactic superpower. In the Lylothian Collective, a species known for their wisdom, the High Council met to discuss their stance. They had long been hesitant to intervene in galactic wars, preferring diplomacy over violence. But now, with the news of Earth's actions, they were faced with a difficult decision. "We cannot remain silent any longer," said a prominent Lylothian elder, his voice filled with concern. "If Earth succeeds, it could lead to a change in the balance of power across the galaxy. But if the Empire crushes them, we could be next." A younger member of the council, a fiery individual named Shara, stood and addressed the room. "I say we take action. We cannot stand by while the Empire runs roughshod over weaker species. Earth is showing courage. We should stand with them." The debate raged on as the Lylothians, like many other species, struggled to decide which side to take. Some were afraid of the consequences of angering the Empire, while others saw the hope of a future free from its tyranny. Back on Earth, Eleanor had no time to wait for more allies. The countdown to the first strike had begun. The Odyssey was primed and ready, its weapons fully charged. Humanity's fleet, small but determined, was positioned just outside Earth's atmosphere, waiting for the signal to engage. "The Empire won't know what hit them," General Jackson said as he glanced over the battle plans once more. "We'll hit their weak points and scatter their fleet." Eleanor nodded, her expression steely. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone under the Empire's boot. This is our chance to show the galaxy what humanity is capable of." As the fleet prepared for their first strike, Eleanor couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This was the moment that would define humanity's future. The Empire had underestimated Earth, and now they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The tension in the room grew thick. The war that had once seemed impossible was now a reality. The first shots would soon be fired, and the galaxy would be forever changed. The time had come. The tension that had been building for weeks exploded into action as Earth's fleet moved into position just outside the outer reaches of the Galactic Empire's controlled space. The Odyssey, Earth's flagship, was in the lead, its weapons humming with power, ready for the battle ahead. Eleanor stood in the command center, her hands clenched into fists, as she watched the holoscreen that displayed the enemy fleet slowly closing in. "We're on the brink," General Jackson said, his voice low but resolute. He knew the gravity of the situation. This would be their first test against the Empire, and failure could mean the end of their hopes for freedom. Eleanor nodded but didn't speak. She knew the odds were stacked against them. The Empire's fleet was massive, an overwhelming force of warships and soldiers trained in tactics that had crushed countless rebellions. But Earth had something the Empire couldn't anticipate: a raw, unyielding will to fight for survival. "All ships, prepare for battle," Eleanor ordered, her voice clear and commanding. "We won't give up. Not now, not ever." The communication channels were open to the fleet. One by one, the captains of Earth's ships acknowledged the command. There was no turning back. The first strike would either make or break them. Meanwhile, on the Imperius, Commander Zoran's cold eyes flicked over the reports coming in. His fleet was nearly in position, and he wasn't taking any chances. His strategy was simple: crush Earth's fleet as quickly as possible. Send a message to the galaxy that defying the Empire was not only futile but also deadly. "We are almost there," Zoran muttered to himself, then turned to his tactical officer. "Make sure every ship is ready for maximum engagement. The sooner we wipe them out, the better." As the Imperius and its fleet closed the distance to Earth's forces, the galaxy held its breath. The Empire's warships were already on high alert, their weapons primed for an all-out assault. But Earth's ships were not afraid. They would not cower. They had something the Empire couldn't comprehend: a cause worth fighting for. Eleanor stood firm, watching as the first shots were fired. The Empire's fleet unleashed a barrage of plasma blasts toward the incoming ships. But Earth's ships were prepared. They'd been trained for this moment, and their tactics were carefully thought out. The Odyssey and its fleet dodged, outmaneuvering the oncoming fire with precision. Earth's ships were smaller, more agile than the lumbering warships of the Empire, and they used that to their advantage. "All ships, engage," General Jackson barked. The fleet opened fire, unleashing a barrage of energy pulses toward the Empire's lead ship, the Imperius. The blasts hit their mark, and the Imperius rocked under the pressure. It wasn't enough to take the ship down, but it sent a clear message. The humans had teeth. They weren't here to roll over. Zoran's face twisted in anger as his flagship shook under the impact. He hadn't expected the humans to strike so fiercely, so quickly. But there was no time for hesitation. "Return fire," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Let's show them the true power of the Empire." Suddenly, the Imperius unleashed a devastating counterattack. Massive beams of concentrated energy shot toward the Odyssey, the bright blue beams searing through the void of space. The Odyssey's shields flared as they absorbed the hits, but the ship was still reeling from the intensity of the blasts. Eleanor gripped the armrests of her chair, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. She could feel the weight of the battle pressing down on her, but she refused to show fear. She knew that Earth's survival depended on this moment, on the bravery and strength of her crew. "Return fire. All weapons at full power," she ordered, her voice calm yet fierce. The Odyssey's weapons unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, striking the Imperius once again. But the Empire wasn't going to be defeated so easily. The battle raged on, the emptiness of space becoming a chaotic battlefield of flashing lights, explosions, and desperate maneuvers. Earth's fleet was outnumbered, but they fought with everything they had. Every ship, from the Odyssey to the smallest fighter, was engaged in a desperate struggle for survival. Suddenly, a new signal came through the communications channel. It was a message from the Valorians, Earth's most powerful allies. "We are en route," came the message from the Valorian flagship. "Prepare for reinforcements." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. The Valorians were arriving. Their advanced technology would turn the tide in Earth's favor. But they wouldn't be here for another few minutes. Earth's fleet would have to hold on until then. The battle was turning into a brutal test of endurance. Earth's ships were beginning to take significant damage, their shields flickering as the Empire's firepower overwhelmed them. The Odyssey had already lost several smaller craft, and its weapons were beginning to show signs of wear. But they couldn't stop now. Then, the Imperius fired another volley, this time aimed directly at the Odyssey. The beam hit dead center, and for a moment, the ship's screens went black. Eleanor's heart stopped. Was this the end? Had Earth's flagship been destroyed? But then, the screens flickered back to life, showing the Odyssey still intact, though heavily damaged. The ship's emergency systems kicked in, keeping the crew alive, keeping the hope alive. "Status report," Eleanor barked. "Shield integrity at 20%. Weapons power is down by 40%, but we're still operational." General Jackson responded quickly. "We can't hold out much longer, though. The Valorians are our only hope." Eleanor stood tall, despite the chaos around her. "Hold the line, General. We'll make it. Earth won't fall." As the battle continued, Earth's fleet began to grow more desperate. The Odyssey and its crew fought with everything they had, knowing that reinforcements were on the way. But the Empire was relentless, and the odds seemed to be stacking higher with every passing second. The question on everyone's mind was simple: would Earth's fleet survive long enough for the reinforcements to arrive? Would humanity's defiance be crushed in the cold void of space, or would they stand tall and prove that they were capable of something greater? The galaxy waited with bated breath as the battle raged on, each side determined to see their vision of the future realized. The battle had reached its boiling point. The two fleets, Earth's and the Galactic Empire's, fought with unmatched fury. The endless flashes of plasma and energy beams lit up the void of space, and the distant stars shimmered like a backdrop to a war that would decide the fate of humanity. But as the hours passed, it became clear that Earth's fleet was slowly being pushed back. The Empire's firepower was overwhelming, and though Earth's ships fought bravely, their numbers were dwindling. The Odyssey was barely holding together, its hull scarred by repeated impacts, and its energy reserves were rapidly depleting. Eleanor stood in the command center, sweat dripping down her forehead, as she watched the chaotic battle unfold on the holoscreen in front of her. Every corner of her mind screamed with the realization that time was running out. The Valorian reinforcements, Earth's one hope, were still minutes away, and the Imperius and its fleet were relentless in their pursuit of victory. "Captain, we've lost another 2 cruisers," reported her tactical officer, her voice laced with desperation. "We're down to less than half our fleet." Eleanor's heart sank as she glanced at the damage reports. Earth's ships were being torn apart. The remaining fighters were struggling to keep the Empire's warships at bay. "We can't afford to lose any more ships," she muttered to herself. "We need to hold them off for just a little longer." General Jackson approached her, his face grim. "We're fighting a losing battle here, Captain. The Empire's numbers are too great. We need to start thinking about retreat." "No," Eleanor snapped, her voice cold. "We don't retreat. We fight until we can fight no more. Earth never runs." The Odyssey shuddered again as another blast hit its shield, this time pushing the ship dangerously close to the brink. Eleanor's mind raced, searching for any possible solution to turn the tide of the battle. And then, like a flash of light in the darkness, an idea struck her, one that could change everything. "General, can we access the ship's emergency arsenal?" she asked, her voice calm but tinged with urgency. "Yes, but those weapons are meant for last resort situations. They're experimental, and there's no telling how effective they'll be," he replied, unsure of what Eleanor was planning. I don't care, Eleanor said with conviction. We need to create an opening for the Valorians to arrive. Launch everything we have. Jackson hesitated for only a second before nodding. Aye, Captain. Initiating the arsenal now. A tense silence filled the room as Eleanor waited for the weapons systems to power up. She knew the gamble they were taking, but it was their only chance. The Odyssey had already absorbed too much damage, and Earth's fleet was on the verge of collapse. But the gamble, if it paid off, could give them a shot at survival. Captain, the experimental weapons are ready, reported the officer at the console. Eleanor's hand hovered over the activation button, her pulse racing. She knew the moment she pressed it, there would be no going back. The weapons could either save them, or they could be the final blow. Do it, she said, her voice unwavering. With a deep breath, the officer pressed the button. Immediately, a series of powerful experimental energy cannons powered up across the Odyssey's hull, their output flickering in waves of unstable, high-energy pulses. The ship groaned under the strain as the cannons fired, sending massive beams of concentrated energy toward the Empire's fleet. For a moment, it seemed like the universe itself had paused. The energy blasts tore through space, striking the enemy warships with a force that shook the entire battlefield. The blasts were chaotic, unpredictable, and unlike anything the Empire had seen before. Ships that had once been invincible now reeled under the onslaught, their shields flickering and hulls breaching. Report, Eleanor demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos. We've hit them hard, Captain, her tactical officer said. Several of their warships have lost power, and their formations are breaking apart. But they're still coming. The tide had shifted, but not enough. The Empire wasn't ready to retreat. Not yet. Zoran, commander of the Imperius, was livid. He hadn't expected the humans to have such powerful weapons. His face twisted in fury as his fleet reeled from the surprise attack. Retaliate. Do not let them escape. Zoran barked at his officers. The Empire's remaining ships regrouped, launching a counterattack with renewed intensity. But now, Earth's fleet had a chance to strike back. General Jackson, prepare our remaining forces for another push, Eleanor said, her mind racing. We won't let them take us down without a fight. The officer at the communications station raised her voice. Captain, the Valorian fleet has just entered the sector. Eleanor's heart leaped. The reinforcements had arrived. Thank the stars, she whispered. Get them to join the fight. Now. The Valorian ships, sleek and advanced, emerged from hyperspace, their weapons already primed. The Empire was about to face an entirely new kind of foe, and Zoran's arrogance was about to be his undoing. The Valorians didn't hesitate. Their ships immediately dove into the fray, attacking with pinpoint precision. They tore through the Empire's lines with terrifying efficiency. Earth's fleet, reinvigorated by the arrival of their allies, fought harder than ever. The Imperius's lead ship took another massive hit, and this time, it was clear. This battle was far from over, but the Empire was losing. With their numbers thinning and their strength fading, the Galactic Empire's grip on victory began to slip. But the war wasn't won yet. The battle raged on, and Earth's forces knew that they couldn't afford to stop until the Empire was finally defeated. Eleanor and her crew, their resolve unwavering, pressed on, knowing that they were fighting for their very existence. The stars around the battlefield burned with the fury of war. Earth's fleet, alongside the Valorian reinforcements, pressed on with relentless force, their combined might shaking the Galactic Empire's once unshakable hold on the galaxy. Despite the Empire's technological superiority, Earth's forces fought with a fierce determination that was almost unmatched, aided by the Valorian ship's superior tactics and speed. Eleanor stood at the helm of the Odyssey, watching the chaos unfold. The enemy fleet, though still formidable, was beginning to show signs of desperation. The massive warships that once towered over Earth's forces were now stumbling, trying to regroup but losing ground rapidly. And as the battle raged on, Earth's warships, fueled by the adrenaline of victory, and the arrival of reinforcements seemed to gain strength with every passing second. But Eleanor knew the battle wasn't over yet. The Empire would not fall easily, and they had one final weapon, one that could change everything. The officer at the communications station called out, "Captain, we're picking up a strange signal from the Imperius. It's coming from their command center, and it's different. It's encrypted, but..." The officer's voice cut off for a second as they deciphered the transmission. "It's a distress call. They're requesting backup, asking for reinforcements, and they're asking for permission to deploy their ultimate weapon." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Their ultimate weapon," she repeated, her mind working rapidly. The Imperius was known for having a last resort weapon, one so devastating that it could change the course of the war in a single strike. But even the thought of it terrified her. "Can we block the transmission?" she asked. The communications officer nodded, typing furiously at their console. "Working on it, Captain. We may have a few seconds before they can send the signal out." Eleanor's hand gripped the command chair tightly. She could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on her. If the Empire could call upon their ultimate weapon, all of Earth's progress, all of their victories, could be wiped away in an instant. "General Jackson, prepare the fleet for evasive maneuvers. I don't know what they have planned, but we won't make it easy for them," Eleanor ordered, her voice steady but filled with the urgency of the moment. The general's voice crackled over the intercom. "Aye, Captain. We're ready." The Valorian ships, too, were preparing for what was to come, their tactical officers working rapidly to counter any potential threat. But even with all their might, Eleanor knew this could be the turning point of the war. "Captain, we've lost contact with one of our destroyers," the communications officer suddenly shouted, panic in their voice. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. What happened? The officer looked grim as they analyzed the data. "It looks like they were hit by a massive energy pulse. It's unlike anything we've seen before. The ship is disintegrating. The entire crew is lost." "No," Eleanor whispered, the weight of the moment sinking in. The Empire had deployed the ultimate weapon. And if this was just the beginning, the Odyssey and its allies might be next. "General, get us out of here," she ordered, but even as she spoke, the Odyssey shuddered violently. The ship's hull groaned under the strain of the immense energy that was building around them. The enemy had already fired the first strike of their devastating weapon. Just then, a booming voice filled the comms. It was Zoran, the commander of the Imperius. His voice echoed with an eerie calm, as if he knew the battle was already over. "Humans," Zoran's voice sneered. "You fought valiantly, but now it is time to meet the end you so desperately avoided. You should have stayed hidden in the shadows, like the insignificant creatures you are." Eleanor's hand tightened on the controls. "We won't bow to you, Zoran. We're Earth's last hope, and we will never give up." Without warning, a bright flash of light erupted from the Imperius. The ship's massive energy cannon fired, sending a concentrated beam of destructive energy directly toward Earth's fleet. The Odyssey lurched as the beam barely missed them, striking a nearby Valorian ship instead. The blast sent the ship spiraling out of control before it exploded in a brilliant fireball. Eleanor's heart raced. That was too close. "General, do you have a plan?" "Captain, if we don't stop that cannon, we won't last much longer. We need to take out their weapon before they can charge it again," Jackson said urgently. "We have one shot. We'll need to move fast." Eleanor's mind raced. How do we stop it? Jackson's voice was calm, but filled with grim determination. We have to disable the power core. It's their only source of energy for the weapon. Eleanor knew what this meant. A direct assault on the Imperius's power core would be suicide for any ship, especially in the middle of a battle. But there was no choice. It was now or never. All ships, Eleanor's voice rang out, prepare to converge on the Imperius. We're going after their power core. The call went out across Earth's fleet and the Valorian ships, and despite the overwhelming odds, there was no hesitation. It was a one-in-a-million chance, but it was the only chance they had. The remaining Earth ships, along with the Valorians, made a daring charge toward the Imperius. The Empire's forces responded quickly, their ships forming a defensive perimeter around their flagship. But the combined might of Earth and Valoria was too much. In a hail of gunfire and blinding explosions, the two fleets plunged into the heart of the enemy's defenses, setting the stage for a final, desperate showdown. The Odyssey and its allied Valorian ships surged forward, their weapons blazing as they made their final charge toward the Imperius. The enemy fleet, although greatly diminished in strength, still put up a fierce defense, but the sheer determination of Earth's forces was overwhelming. As they pushed past the enemy ships, each explosion in their wake sent a clear message. The war was nearing its end. Eleanor stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the Imperius. Every second counted now. They had to make it through the defense perimeter and strike directly at the heart of the enemy flagship. If they failed, it would be the end of humanity's fight for survival. All ships, focus fire on the enemy's flanks. General Jackson's voice echoed through the comms. We need to clear the way. The Odyssey shook violently as enemy fire slammed into its shields, but they held firm, powered by Earth's unyielding will to survive. The Valorian ships fought alongside them, their sleek warships darting through the battlefield with precision, striking down one enemy ship after another. Together, they formed an unstoppable force, cutting through the Empire's defenses like a blade through cloth. But there was no time to celebrate. The Imperius loomed large ahead, its weapons powering up for another devastating strike. Eleanor knew that if they didn't destroy it now, they would never get another chance. Captain, the communications officer shouted urgently. The Imperius is preparing another shot. It's charging the energy cannon. Eleanor's heart raced as she glanced at the tactical readout. The energy levels were spiking, and the cannon would be ready to fire in seconds. If they didn't disable it, everything they had fought for would be destroyed in a single cataclysmic blast. Jackson, we're going for the power core, Eleanor shouted, slamming her fist on the console. Prepare the boarding party. A tense silence followed as Jackson's voice crackled back. Understood, Captain. We'll clear a path for you. The Odyssey and the Valorian ships pulled in tight formation as they broke through the enemy defenses, the last of the Empire's ships falling to their combined firepower. The path was now clear for the final assault. Engage full thrust, Eleanor ordered, and with that, the Odyssey hurtled forward, dodging a hail of energy blasts and enemy debris. The massive Imperius was now in their sights, its core exposed in the center of the ship like a massive, glowing heart. If they could disable that, the weapon would be rendered useless, and the war could be won. Prepare for boarding, Eleanor said, her voice cold and steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. This is it. With precise coordination, Earth's ships and the Valorians moved in, landing their boarding craft on the Imperius under heavy fire. A brutal ground battle erupted within the enemy ship. The soldiers from both Earth and Valoria fought their way through the corridors, cutting down Empire soldiers in their path. The stakes were higher than ever. Failure meant the end of everything. Eleanor led the charge with her most trusted crew members, her mind focused only on the power core. As they reached the control room, the walls around them trembled with the intensity of the ongoing battle. The power core was guarded by a team of elite Imperial soldiers, but they were no match for the fury of Earth's finest. With a battle cry, Eleanor's team stormed into the room, taking down the guards with deadly precision. The power core sat before them, its immense energy ready to annihilate anything in its path. Eleanor knew this was the turning point. The fate of humanity rested on this single moment. Set the charges, she ordered, her voice unwavering. Her team worked quickly, planting explosive charges around the power core. The ticking countdown filled the room as they raced against time. Every second was crucial. The Imperius could unleash its devastating weapon at any moment. Charges set, one of the officers reported, breathless. We need to get out of here now. Eleanor nodded, signaling her team to fall back. The sound of explosions and gunfire echoed in the corridors as they made their way back to the boarding craft. The countdown continued in the background, each second feeling like an eternity. As they reached the safety of their ship, Eleanor glanced over her shoulder at the Imperius. The massive Empire ship was beginning to shake, its hull groaning under the strain of the explosive charges. The countdown ticked down. 5 seconds left. Brace for impact, Eleanor shouted. The Odyssey and the surrounding ships accelerated away from the Imperius, just as the final second ticked away. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the heart of the enemy ship, followed by a massive shockwave that rippled through space. The Imperius exploded in a spectacular burst of energy, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The Galactic Empire's flagship had been destroyed, and with it, their last hope of winning the war. For a brief moment, there was silence, a silence of disbelief, relief, and triumph. Then the comms came to life with the voices of Earth's fleet and the Valorians, their cheers echoing through the intercom. "Mission accomplished, Captain," General Jackson said, his voice full of emotion. "We've won." Eleanor stood in the command center, her gaze fixed on the aftermath of the battle. Earth had struck back with everything it had, and they had won. But it wasn't just the destruction of the Imperius that mattered. It was the message they had sent to the galaxy. A message that humanity would no longer be pushed around, that they would fight for their survival and their future. "We've only just begun," Eleanor whispered to herself, a fierce determination in her heart. "This is just the beginning of humanity's rise." As the remaining Imperial ships retreated into the distance, Earth's fleet sailed into the stars, united, strong, and ready to face whatever the galaxy had in store for them. The war was far from over, but humanity had already proven one thing: they would never be forgotten, and they would never surrender.